This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
A potentially dangerous heat wave taking hold across parts of the U.S.
Because it ain't even summer yet. Looking forward to some triple digits.
I'm Clayton Neville.
Crews are attacking multiple wildfires in California amid high temperatures and strong winds.
A significant volume of fire that was traveling very rapidly.
I'm Jennifer King.
A 19-year-old killed his parents, injured an officer, and then was killed by police. I'm Sue Aller.
2 of the 9 people wounded in Saturday's shooting in Rochester Hills, Michigan, remain hospitalized in critical condition. I'm Mike Hempen.
On Wall Street, the S&P 500 index and the NASDAQ opening at fresh record highs this morning. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
No in Iowa from a federal judge, and the Biden administration planning deportation protection. All ahead on America in the Morning. Summer officially rolls in Thursday, and the first national heat wave of the year is tightening its grip on much of the U.S. Correspondent Clayton Neville has the latest.
Parts of the Midwest, the South, and much of the Northeast experiencing 90-degree temperatures this week. In some spots, it'll feel even hotter.
It's pretty hot. Plus, me wearing black doesn't help at all. But it's pretty hot.
Americans doing the best they can to stay cool.
Well, I drink a lot of water. You know, that's important to drink a lot of water. Stay in the shade. You know, stay in the shade and just drink a lot of fluids, you know. Me, myself, I have to. It's a need for me.
More than 130 million Americans in the midst of a heat wave that stretches from Texas to New York and is expected to bring a week of 90-degree temps from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. Rising temps also in the forecast in cities like Boston, Chicago, Detroit, even D.C., further south to Louisville and South Carolina. Some Americans bracing for a hot few months.
Because it ain't even summer yet. Looking forward to some triple digits.
The heat in moderation, of course.
I don't like too much of nothing. I like the cold, but not too much. I like the heat, but not too much.
Health experts recommend staying hydrated and taking breaks, but for many who work outside, that's easier said than done.
Take a couple showers a day. I might, depending on what kind of fabric I got on, you know what I mean? Wet it, wring it, I have it damp, you know, let the cool wind, get cool that way.
The National Weather Service says this marks the first significant heat wave of the season, with the hottest temps of the summer set to hit the Midwest, the Great Lakes, Northeast, and Mid-Atlantic. Forecasters say for some spots, the temperatures will be so intense that the longevity of dangerous heat hasn't been experienced in decades. I'm Clayton Neville.
As the heat wave grips a large swath of the nation, a cluster of wildfires fueled by heat, dry fuel, steep terrain, and gusty conditions is keeping California firefighters in harm's way. Correspondent Jennifer King reports a fire near Los Angeles has already charred over 15,000 acres, and 4 other western states are dealing with large blazes as well.
Metro fire crews were dispatched out to a large grass fire. Crews initially pulled out. They had a significant column. Immediately went to work. When they arrived, they had multiple structures threatened. Significant volume of fire that was traveling very rapidly with the wind. This fire was moving and advancing very quickly.
The post-fire burning near Interstate 5 in Gorman on the main north-south route between Los Angeles and Bakersfield led to evacuations from the Hungry Valley State Vehicular Recreation Area, where at least 2 structures were burned.
Those ambers, when you get those strong gusts of winds with a fire at a ridgetop, to blow those ambers up to they can blow ambers up to a mile away and cause another spot fire.
Kenichi Haskett with the LA County Fire Department says strong gusts are hampering efforts by aircraft crews.
It makes it challenging, basically, for water drops. As you can imagine, helicopters or airplanes trying to drop fire retardant or water on a fire, and when it's windy, it pushes it just sprays the water everywhere else, or that we don't need it. So that's been a challenge, putting water on the ground from our aircraft, and then additionally makes it spotting. What we call spotting is when you get those ambers that can reach up to a mile away from where it originally started.
Officials warned residents of Castaic near Pyramid Lake they should prepare to leave if the fire pushes further south. As of last night, that fire was nearly 23 square miles and about 2% contained, according to CAL FIRE. The Hesperia fire is nearly 2 square miles, up to 20% contained, burning in the San Bernardino Mountains south of Victorville. In Sonoma County, the Point fire sent up huge plumes of smoke and led to evacuations as well. More crews and nighttime helicopter drops have been deployed. It's burning in brush and fir forest west of Geyserville. I'm Jennifer King.
Biden's discrimination rule changes blocked by a federal judge. We'll have that story when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. With high heat gripping the nation, check on your elderly neighbors. Make sure outside pets have plenty of water. Here's that forecast across the country from AccuWeather.com meteorologist Adam Sadveri.
Intense heat that started to settle in across much of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic yesterday will continue to build into this afternoon. For many locations, this will be the second day of what is expected to be an extensive heat wave lasting at least through the end of this week and possibly through this weekend. High temperatures into the lower 90s will be widespread, with peak summer-like heat expanding as far north as Maine and southern Canada to as far west as Illinois and the Central Plains. As humidity continues to rise for most of the region, AccuWeather real-field temperatures can peak in the triple digits. Today, more than ever, it is important to stay hydrated, and anyone spending an extended period outdoors should exercise extreme caution. In contrast, much of the Northwest will be experiencing cooler than normal conditions through today. For some of the higher elevations in the northern Rockies, particularly Montana and northern Idaho, there are even winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories in place. 1 to 3 inches of snow can continue to accumulate for the highest peaks. Even as far south as Nevada and northern Utah, where conditions will stay dry, a surge of cold air and gusty winds will push temperatures in the highest elevations to approach freezing levels. Dry air with seasonably hot conditions can be expected for most of the southwest and interior of California. At the immediate west coast, more comfortable weather will prevail. For portions of the western Gulf, a budding tropical rainstorm will spread heavy rain across southern Louisiana and coastal Texas. This rainstorm is likely to strengthen over the coming days into the first tropical storm of the year, Alberto. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Adam Sadveri.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Calling it an abuse of power, a federal judge in Louisiana has blocked the implementation of President Biden's Title IX discrimination rule changes from going into effect in 6 states. Correspondent Julie Walker reports.
A federal judge temporarily blocks the Biden administration's new Title IX rule expanding protections for LGBTQ+ students in 6 additional states. The ruling Monday deals another setback for a new policy that has come under legal attack by Republican attorneys general. U.S. District Judge Danny Reeves referred to the regulation as arbitrary in the truest sense of the word. He granted a preliminary injunction blocking it in Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. Last week, a different federal judge temporarily blocked the new rule in Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, and Idaho. I'm Julie Walker.
A Tampa, Florida teenager is dead after he murdered his parents, then got into a gun battle with police. Sue Aller has details.
Authorities say it will take at least 3 months for Sheriff Deputy Shane McGow to recover from being shot in the leg during the police shootout Saturday night.
I'm hit. Tourniquet. I'm hit.
That was the audio from body cam video. McGow was taken to the hospital to have the bullet removed. He was released on Monday and is expected to have a full recovery. Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister held a press conference shortly after the incident.
Our suspect is Christos Alexander. Again, he is 19 years of age, and he has died here this evening, again, because he made the choice to get in a gunfight with our deputy sheriffs after killing his own mother and father.
Investigators are trying to figure out how Alexander got hold of the gun. Deputies say they were called to the home at least 10 times before the deadly shooting, mostly for mental health services and violence against his parents. I'm Sue Aller.
When America in the Morning continues, IRS closes tax loophole for the rich after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is sponsored by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments takes a disciplined approach with investing, helping clients navigate volatile markets. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with the Tuesday Report.
Wall Street opens this morning after another winning day for stocks. The S&P 500 index and the NASDAQ each open at fresh record highs this morning.
We have a really great environment right now. The data in the U.S. is very favorable. The Atlanta tracker for GDP is running at 3.1%. Inflation is making progress. The job market remains pretty strong. The financial conditions are fairly easy.
Hightower's Stephanie Link on CNBC. The IRS and the Treasury moving to close a large tax loophole used by the wealthy and by business partnerships.
The Biden administration is taking steps to crack down on a loophole in the tax code that allows companies and wealthy people to hide what the government says is billions of dollars in taxable income. So it's a strategy known as partnership basis shifting transactions. It's when a single company operates as several different legal entities, for example, in order to both maximize the deductions that they can take and minimize the taxes that they owe. The IRS estimates that closing this loophole will raise more than $50 billion in revenue over the next decade. This is the latest step in the Biden administration's efforts to increase enforcement of the tax code with a particular focus on businesses and the wealthy.
CNBC's Megan Casella. Apple killing off its buy now, pay later product called Apple Pay Later. The company may be offloading the service to other third parties. Apple's mentioned Affirm as a possible partner. McDonald's will end its AI drive-through test with IBM. The technology was being tried out at about 100 restaurants. McDonald's says it does believe there will be a place for AI in its drive-throughs in the future. The U.S. suing Adobe, claiming it tricked people into signing up for subscription plans without clearly disclosing the terms of the plans and then making it difficult for people to cancel.
Well, perhaps Hollywood is feeling a little better about their business now.
You know, because people actually went to the movies last weekend, and with the holiday tomorrow, that momentum could keep going for Disney Pixar.
Inside Out 2 brought some much-needed juice to the summer box office, making its debut with an estimated $155 million weekend haul here in the U.S. Now, that's the second highest theatrical opening of an animated film ever, and the first movie since Warner Brothers' Barbie to top $100 million in its opening weekend. Disney Pixar's The Incredibles 2 still holds the record for the biggest opening weekend for an animated film, and that was back in 2018.
CNBC's Silvana Hanau. On today's watch list, we get retail sales numbers for May. Earnings have really slowed down. We only hear from home builder KB Home today. Boeing's CEO is on Capitol Hill today, testifying on quality control issues. And on this date in 1971, Southwest Airlines' first flight took off from Dallas Love Field.
All those years ago, CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, immigration, state law versus federal law. After these messages. This is America in the Morning. Welcome back. Investigators still trying to learn more about what led to the weekend mass shooting at a Michigan splash pad. Correspondent Mike Hempen reports 2 people involved in the incidents are fighting for their lives.
Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard says 2 of the 9 people wounded in Saturday's shooting at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, Michigan, remain hospitalized in critical condition. Bouchard says so far, investigators have not been able to find any manifesto-type information as to what set off the gunman, 42-year-old Michael Nash.
We may not find anything like that. That's part of why we're examining devices to determine if there were anything that could connect those dots. I mean, obviously, the first question people have is why.
The audio courtesy of WXYZ TV. Investigators say Nash fired as many as 28 shots, stopping several times to reload. After the shootings, authorities say he went to his home and killed himself. Bouchard says Nash had no criminal history, but suffered from mental health issues. I'm Mike Hempen.
A federal judge has temporarily blocked Iowa from enforcing its own immigration law, which would make it a state crime to enter Iowa after being deported or denied entry into the United States. The judge overseeing the case said his reasoning for the decision was the belief that the Department of Justice and civil rights groups who filed the lawsuit were likely to succeed in their argument that federal immigration laws supersede state laws in the matter. Immigration's become a top issue in this year's presidential campaign, and federal authorities have seen a surge in migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. President Biden is planning to announce deportation protection and work permits for spouses of U.S. citizens. With what that means, here's correspondent Lisa Dwyer.
President Joe Biden is expected to announce a sweeping new policy that would lift the threat of deportation for tens of thousands of people married to U.S. citizens. It's an aggressive election year action on immigration that has been sought by many Democrats. The policy will allow roughly 490,000 spouses of U.S. citizens an opportunity to apply for a parole-in-place program, which would shield them from deportations and offer them work permits if they have lived in the country for at least 10 years. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, June 18th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
The chair of the House Freedom Caucus is in danger of losing a primary to a fellow Republican. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
Maryland governor's marijuana paroles.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's war cabinet dissolved. I'm Clayton Neville.
One of New Jersey's top Democrats has been indicted. I'm Pamela Furr.
NATO nations following through on beefing up their fair share.
The Internal Revenue Service plans to end another major tax loophole. Seth Suto, New York.
The Surgeon General might require a warning label for social media platforms for kids. I'm Chuck Palm.
What are the big box office busts of 2024 so far? I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Today's national forecast, a near hurricane, heat wave, and snow. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Adam Sadveri.
A budding tropical rainstorm located in the western Gulf of Mexico will spread heavy rain across southern Louisiana and the Texas coastline today into the second half of this week. The National Hurricane Center has labeled this storm as the first potential tropical cyclone of the year and will likely be given the name Alberto within the next 24 hours. Coastal locations of the western Gulf should prepare for rounds of flooding downpours associated with this storm over the coming days. Dry air with seasonably hot conditions can be expected for most of the southwest and interior of California. At the immediate west coast, however, cooler and more comfortable conditions will prevail. For much of the Northeast and Midwest, a building heat wave will persist through today. Intense heat is expected to impact over 100 million people through this week, with high temperatures of over 90 degrees expanding as far north as Maine and southern Canada to as far west as Illinois and the Central Plains. Expect a strain on power distribution centers as AccuWeather real fuel temperatures soar into the 100s for many areas. In contrast, much of the interior West and northern Rockies will be experiencing significantly cooler than normal conditions. Some higher elevations in Montana and northern Idaho even have active winter weather advisories in place today, with snow in the forecast. That's the weather across America. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it will be hot and humid with an afternoon thunderstorm, the high today 95. However, in Colorado Springs, Colorado, it will be partly sunny and breezy, yet cooler with a seasonal high of 79. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Adam Sadveri.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. The race for each party's candidate for the White House continues, and it's primary day in 3 states. John Stolnis has a preview of a number of reasons voters are heading to the polls.
The voice of Donald Trump featured in a campaign ad urging voters in Virginia's 5th District to support State Senator John McGuire in today's primary.
John McGuire is an American hero who served as a Navy SEAL. He's strong on the border. Everyone needs to get out and vote for John McGuire.
Trump and former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are both backing Maguire in their efforts to unseat the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Bob Good, who voted to oust former Speaker McCarthy last October and endorsed Governor Ron DeSantis for president over Donald Trump. Good tells WSEC TV he's anxious for Election Day today.
It's sad that Washington, D.C. has spent millions of dollars on the Republican side, not to defeat Democrats in November, but to find a candidate who is willing to do or say anything to try to win.
Recent polling shows Maguire with a healthy lead. While a Maguire win certainly boosts the perceived power of a Trump endorsement in GOP primaries, a Good victory would certainly dull it. In Oklahoma, Congressman Tom Cole, seen as an older member of the GOP's establishment wing, is facing a primary challenge from wealthy businessman Paul Bondar, who has spent about $5 million of his own money.
Who do you trust? Texan Paul Bondar, who's desperately lying about where he lives, delinquent taxes, even Donald Trump's support.
I don't even like the Longhorns. Austin's liberal, just like D.C. Hey, I've played a lot of football in my life, and I love the Sooners, but this election, it's not about football. We've all seen what Tom Cole can do in the last 22 years.
Cole, who was first elected to his seat in 2002, is expected to win and was endorsed by Donald Trump on Truth Social. Meanwhile, in Georgia, there are a handful of runoffs taking place, one of them between Democrats Clarence Blaylock and Sean Harris, vying to see who will try to unseat controversial Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene in a solidly red district. Other races of note, in Virginia, a dozen candidates are seeking to replace Representative Jennifer Wexton, who is retiring due to a degenerative illness. In Virginia's 7th district, Republicans will try to win back a seat held by Democrat Abigail Spanberger, who is leaving to run for governor in 2025. And 5 Republicans are running to see who will challenge Democratic Senator Tim Kaine for his Senate seat this November. John Stolnis, Washington.
Pardon of historic proportions as the governor of Maryland, with a stroke of a pen, grants tens of thousands of people release from marijuana convictions. Correspondent Julie Walker has more on the story.
With deep pride and soberness, I will pardon over 175,000 convictions.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore signs an executive order pardoning more than 175,000 low-level marijuana convictions, saying it's not enough to legalize pot.
When it comes to cannabis, rolling out one of the best and most equitable legal markets in the country is incredibly important. But that rollout must go hand in hand with pardoning past conduct, and Maryland is going to lead by example.
Moore says legalizing marijuana last year, after voters approved a constitutional amendment, did not turn the clock back on decades of harm from the war on drugs.
It doesn't erase the fact that people who were arrested for cannabis 3 or 4 or 40 years ago still have those convictions on their records to this day. We cannot celebrate the benefits of legalization if we do not address the consequences of criminalization.
I'm Julie Walker.
Israeli officials say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dissolved his war cabinet that had been responsible for decision-making in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Correspondent Clayton Neville has the latest.
The move to dissolve the 3-person war cabinet comes after the cabinet's minister, Benny Gantz, a former military chief, voiced frustration over how the war was being handled and quit. Gantz said that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is making total victory impossible. The tension growing. Protests near Netanyahu's home as anti-government demonstrators voiced their frustrations. Gantz also accused the prime minister of failing to prioritize negotiating the release of more than 100 hostages. White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby was asked if he thinks a war cabinet's necessary.
We said at the time that we believed it was a worthwhile step, and we still hold by that. But with Mr. Gantz's decision to leave, I'm not sure that Prime Minister Netanyahu was left with a whole lot of other choices.
As war rages in the Middle East, the Houthis now claiming responsibility for attacks on U.S. vessels last week near Yemen.
They don't care a whit about Palestinians in Gaza. And this isn't some principled stand they're taking. It's terrorism, as I said, pure and simple.
Kirby said the Houthis are causing needless suffering for the entire region.
For Gazans, for the Sudanese, for the Yemenis themselves. And as I said, this is pure terrorism. There's simply no other word for it.
Israeli forces say they'll pause daytime fighting along a route in southern Gaza to help the flow of humanitarian aid there. This after 8 Israeli soldiers were killed in southern Gaza in the deadliest attack on Israeli forces in months. Reports also surfacing this week that the Gaza-based reporter who held 3 Israeli hostages captive at his home worked for a U.S. nonprofit. He was killed by the IDF during a raid. The Palestine Chronicle, based in Olympia, Washington, has sister publications in both Italy and in France. There are now calls to investigate those publications. I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, top politician nabbed in corruption scheme. That and more after these messages. Back now, this is America in the Morning. I'm John Trout. One of New Jersey's most powerful Democrats has been charged by the state's attorney general, accusing the man and his allies of a long-running corruption scheme. Pamela Furr has details.
The indictment against George Norcross was brought by AG Matt Platkin, who says Norcross has run a criminal enterprise for the last 12 years.
Through their alleged acts, the Norcross enterprise was able to obtain the rights to build multiple buildings and obtain hundreds of millions of dollars in government-issued tax credits, among other benefits. They allegedly did this with the complicity and acquiescence of various state and local elected and appointed officials, who turned a blind eye to their duties and obligations to the people of New Jersey to instead serve the interests of a powerful few.
But in a dramatic move, the South Jersey power broker personally attended the press conference, uninvited, and sat in the front row staring at Platkin as he announced the 13-count indictment on racketeering and various other charges. Platkin was not intimidated and told the crowd at the press conference,
"Let today be a lesson for everyone in this state. We will never back down from doing the hard work necessary to do the right thing for the right reasons. We will never stop pursuing justice."
Now, these indictments come as New Jersey's senior Senator Bob Menendez is on trial on corruption charges as well. He's accused of wielding power in Washington on behalf of foreign governments and New Jersey businessmen who allegedly lavished him with gold bars. I'm Pamela Furr.
2024 could be a financial banner year for NATO, as a record number of organization countries are expected to reach the alliance's recommended defense funding amid the war in Ukraine. Correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports.
Together, we're deterred further Russian aggression in Europe. I know we welcome Finland and Sweden to the alliance. And we strengthen NATO's eastern flank, making it clear that we'll defend every single inch of NATO territory.
NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says a record more than 20 NATO member nations are expected to hit the Western Military Alliance's defence spending target this year as the war in Ukraine drives worldwide concerns. Stoltenberg made the announcement on Monday during a talk at the Wilson Center in Washington.
We must ensure that Putin's aggression doesn't pay off, today or in the future. That is why, at the summit, we will continue to bring Ukraine ever closer to NATO membership.
The estimated figure marks a nearly fourfold increase from 2021 in the ranks of the 32 NATO members meeting the alliance's defence spending guideline. NATO member countries agreed last year to spend at least 2% of their gross domestic product on defence. Stoltenberg's meeting with President Joe Biden later at the White House. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
It's considered a tax loophole for the wealthy, and the IRS wants to put an end to it. Correspondent Seth Sutel reports there are some in Congress who are against the plan supported by the Biden administration.
The Internal Revenue Service plans to end another major tax loophole that could raise more than $50 billion in revenue over the next decade. That's according to the U.S. Treasury Department. A proposed rule and guidance announced Monday includes plans to stop a practice called partnership basis shifting. That's a process by which a business or person can enter into a series of transactions that will result in no taxes being paid. White House officials say that after evaluating the practice, there are no economic grounds for these kinds of transactions. Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo described them as a shell game. Biden administration officials say the additional IRS funding through the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act had enabled increased oversight and greater awareness of the practice. Seth Sutel, New York.
Surgeon General warning labels like those found on tobacco products may be coming to social media platforms for children. Here's that from correspondent Chuck Palm.
In an opinion piece by the New York Times, Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy said that social media is a contributing factor in the mental health crisis for young people.
The skewed and often distorted environment of social media often does a disservice to many of those children.
He went on to say it's time to require a Surgeon General's warning label on social media platforms stating that social media is associated with significant mental health harms for adolescents. 95% of youth ages 13 to 17 say that they use social media, and more than 1/3 of those say that they use it almost constantly. Last year, Murthy warned that there wasn't enough evidence to show that social media is safe for children and teens. He said at the time policymakers need to address the harms of social media the same way they regulate things like car seats, baby formula, medication, and other products that children use. Any sort of labeling would require congressional action, and it's not sure how it would be implemented. You can chime in at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
Tuesday Sports is in. Here's America in the Morning's Robert Workman.
The Boston Celtics are NBA champions. If that sounds familiar, they won their 18th title last night, beating the Dallas Mavericks 106-88 in Boston to take this year's finals 4-1. The Celtics led wire to wire, opening up a 10-point edge by the end of the first quarter, which grew to 21 at the half with Peyton Pritchard's half-court buzzer beater. The second half was mostly a victory lap in front of the home crowd. Jason Tatum had 31 points and 11 assists. Jaylen Brown added 21 points and was named Finals MVP.
I can't even put into words the emotions, it's just I'm blessed and I'm grateful.
The Panthers can wrap up their first Stanley Cup at home tonight against the Oilers. Florida up 3-1 in that title series. Baseball, the Phillies pounded the Padres 9-2. Kyle Schwarber hit a pair of 2-run homers. Trey Turner had 2 hits after missing more than a month with a hamstring injury. Mets routed the Rangers 14-2. 22 hits, 4 of them from Francisco Lindor.
Right now we're riding a good wave. Hitting is contagious, and it seems like we are in one of those stages where everything is coming our way.
The Mets have won 6 straight. Dodgers clocked the Rockies 9-5. Tyler O'Neill hit 2 of Boston's 4 home runs as the Red Sox rolled over the Blue Jays. Angels over the Brewers, a Zach attack. Zach Plesac went 6 innings for the win in his Halos debut. Zach Neto hit a 2-run dinger. Tyro Estrada's 3-run blast in the top of the 9th gave the Giants the win over the Cubs. Cardinals outlasted the Marlins in 12 innings. Braves tipped the Tigers, and the Pirates ripped the Reds. At the College World Series in Omaha, we're down to 6 teams. Virginia and NC State have been sent packing in the double elimination tournament. 2 more go home today. Florida State faces 4-seed North Carolina. Then Florida takes on 2-seed Kentucky. The winners advance to meet top-ranked Tennessee and number 3 Texas A&M in the bracket finals. And it was a day of upsets at Euro 2024. Romania blasted Ukraine 3-0, their first win in the tournament in 24 years. Then Slovakia beat Belgium 1-0. Belgian star Romelu Lukaku had 2 goals disallowed on replay. Favored France edged Austria 1-0 on an own goal, and their captain Kylian Mbappe had to leave the game early with a broken nose. That's Tuesday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return on America in the Morning, Bon Appetit. Amazing discovery by archaeologists found at Mount Vernon. After these messages. This is America in the Morning. Welcome back. Archaeologists made a startling discovery while working at the George Washington Mount Vernon estate in Virginia. Correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports they came upon centuries-old cherries perfectly preserved from the 18th century.
Dozens of century-old, impeccably preserved cherries and berries from the cellar of George Washington's Mount Vernon estate in Northern Virginia have been discovered during an archaeological dig. Whole cherries with pits were found in some of the bottles. Other bottles hold what appears to be gooseberries or currants. Mount Vernon principal archaeologist Jason Burrows.
Finding what is essentially fresh fruit 250 years later is pretty spectacular.
Mount Vernon is partnering with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to conduct DNA testing on the fruit. In one pit,
we think this is probably the summer of 1775. which is the last harvest just before Washington rode off to Philadelphia and became commander-in-chief just before the Revolution.
They're also examining more than 50 cherry pits to see if any of them can be planted. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
There have been few major box office success stories for 2024. It's been a year of some pretty bad flops. A second look from Kevin Carr.
The box office has started to rebound, but 2024 has still seen some pretty significant busts.
Furiosa fought the world.
Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, famously stalled out on Memorial Day, traditionally a huge money-making weekend. But the would-be blockbuster only mustered a $32 million four-day opening. Before Furiosa, Universal's The Fall Guy was meant to jumpstart the summer.
I'm just a stunt guy!
But after a soft $28 million opening, it landed on VOD a couple weeks into its anemic theatrical run.
Okay, I'm not the hero of this story.
The absence of a film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe this year was not saved by Sony's Spider-Man adjacent Madam Web.
I don't understand what's happening.
This film's disastrous $44 million domestic total came in significantly lower than the notorious flop Morbius from 2022.
You and I, we're not so different. Agent Argyle.
And Apple TV Plus's $200 million budgeted Argyle failed to get much traction in February with a grand total of only $45 million at the domestic box office and not even $100 million worldwide.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
The only silver lining of the year may be in family films.
Color me intrigued.
Both If and the Garfield movie opened soft but are seeing better legs, which is what gave Migration a chance to soar past Christmas.
Isn't it beautiful? This is awesome. Oh.
I'm Kevin Carr.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, June 18th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.